Okay, I am super pumped for you to see this interview with Cameron Kitt. She's the founder of YOYOS, a documentary storytelling company. She is a filmmaker with a very creative mind, and here's the best part. She specializes in telling patient stories, but not in the case study kind of way. No, 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 no. She turns patient stories into film festival worthy content creations. You don't want to miss Cameron sharing how film festivals may be a hidden growth channel for healthcare marketers. Let's get to it.
Swaay.Health.
Well, Cameron, welcome to the program.
Colin, I'm so grateful and glad to be here. I just want to say I love your setup. Your lighting looks amazing. So thanks for having me.
thanks for thanks for coming on the camera with me. This is gonna be a lot of fun. I'm totally jealous of your background, by the way. That's an aspirational studio for me. Like that would be wonderful to
Yeah,
have something like that, right?
like an airplane hangar.
There you go. There you go. Yes. Yes. Minus the rent for something like that. That would be good.
Yeah. No, like in my dream, it's just on a property that someone gave to me, right? With
Yes.
no electrical, no,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a perfectly free.
It's from the rich uncle we all wish we had, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, I already kitted out the studio. I got lights for you. I got lights everywhere. I got you all the cameras you need.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you could only see over there, Cameron, on this side of it, you'd be probably disgusted with how many lights and light stands I've got over there on this side of the studio. So
Could never be disgusted with lights. I'm a big fan, so
I got
I'm sure it's a good number.
I got tube lights, I got lantern light, I got everything over there.
All right, dang.
It's all set. It's all set. We could trade conversations about studios all afternoon. But Cameron,
Maybe I
I
should
am
turn on my
interested
light.
to learn more about what you do.
Okay.
So Cameron, please tell me about you and tell our audience a little bit about YOYOS.
Yeah. So I'm a filmmaker, and my company is called YOYOS, which stands for You Own Your Own Stories. It's a documentary and podcast storytelling company that focuses on telling patient stories that are emotional and memorable and drive results. So me personally, I'm a filmmaker. I'm really interested in sci-fi, and I've been working in the medical industry for 14 years now, doing emotional patient stories, clinician stories, and I just really love my job. Like I love being this close to patients and telling stories that most of the time when you come to me, it's a hero's journey, right? Here's how I was diagnosed with something, here's how I overcame it. I had this, surgery, and here's how it changed my life. So I get to tell positive stories, and a lot of documentary filmmakers don't get to tell those, right? There's
So
a lot of
so
depressing docs out there.
for sure, a lot of that case. But Cameron, how did you get into telling patient stories? Because that's not usually a top choice. Let's be honest, for filmmakers to get into. So how did you get into this
Hmm.
world?
Well, I studied art, so I ran an animation company when I got out of college. I was the head video editor, at a company called Whiteboard Geeks, and I got promoted up the chain to running that business. And that we fell into the medical device arena, and we ended up working with pharma, worked with other healthcare providers, hospitals. But like most of the clients we got, we found a niche, and I didn't search for it, right? That's how business goes. It happened one day that a complicated topic was bariatric surgery. Now,
Mm,
this was before Ozempic. So how does a doctor explain to patients, or how do we explain to doctors how obesity works in the body? And it worked best by drawing. So that's how I got started in that field. And then when I started Yo-Yos, it was because I've been making documentaries for years in my own films. And it was a shower thought. Truly, Colin, it was truly a shower thought. I was like, wow, I feel like I could really do the niche that I think I could pull is this film festival angle, because that's what I'm really good at, is getting into film festivals. So I pitched it to some of my past clients, and they said, I want to try it. And then we've been off to the races ever since.
so tell me about that. So what is this film festival approach that you mentioned?
Yeah, so if you make a film that's about the disease and not about you or your product, you can submit to festivals all across the US. There's dozens of them all the time, right? Colin, you're in Boston, right?
I'm actually in
Uh,
Toronto.
Oh, you're in Toronto. Well, you know more than me because of TIFF. TIFF's my favorite film festival, actually. But there's lots of little ones. So in suburbs and areas, and they're running all the time, and they're events that run without you having to manage an event. You submit, you get your film in, and then you get to be in an audience with real people who have nothing to do with you watching the story. And the benefit is it's a huge PR. engine. It just keeps going. Once you submit into a film festival as an independent filmmaker, the festival circuit is what you do. You make your film, you go on the festival circuit. So I'm really used to submitting, and I've been in a lot of festivals. I've directed over 40 films, and I know a lot of the programmers, and so I was able to kind of create that as an additional campaign for a lot of my clients, and they love it. One of my best clients is Terumo. They make blood and cell technologies, and we made a patient video about a woman with sickle cell disease and about her goal to be a mom. It was actually a positive story. And that was really where it started to take off because, once you make a video and it goes up on YouTube, the worst thing is for it to just kind of rot and never have a life after that. And what would happen is, 6 months after the video was done, we'd find out we got into a festival. And then another 6 months later, we'd find out. And it would create more life around the story, more LinkedIn posts. And ever since then, I've been tirelessly pitching it to everyone I can because I think it's a great, it doesn't cost that much extra money, and it just gives so much extra oomph to the life of your story that everyone worked so hard on. So I recommend it, and I think it's super fun. Plus, if everyone works so hard on it and you get to go see it in a real theater with people and they stand and clap, it just feels different. And for the patients, it gives them an extra platform that they wouldn't otherwise have.
I want to pursue that in a second, but I want to go back just to the foundation of this. So you take the approach of like a documentary filmmaker to
Mhm.
telling these stories, and they're
Yeah.
so good and so involved that they can actually be shown at a film festival. Like, so these are not
Yeah.
like 2-minute videos that go up on a website that help promote like a foundation or something. Although I'm sure they could use it that way, but these are like
Yeah.
full on films. Like that's
They're their own short film, and it helps. Yeah, I mean, so the difference would be as opposed to making a video that's like, here at Sway.Health, we help you overcome your concerns by building a community. The film would start with like you getting up in the morning, and then it would follow you, and you'd be like, I didn't know that. It's about the person, it's about the patient. So as long as you shift the focus, and it doesn't feel like a commercial, you can submit. Now, most of my work, at this point, more than 50% of the films are really a little too commercial to submit. But it doesn't mean you can't make the film as if it's going to be submitted to Sundance and not
right.
just the med legal team, right? But yeah, at this point, it's like somewhere around 40% of the projects we do a film festival strategy for, um, if it makes sense.
It
But
makes sense.
I find that it makes my clients look good. At the end of the year, they're showing posters with laurels, right? Um, Kind of helps you with your asking for a raise.
So when you approach a story or a film or sorry, even a video this way,
Mhm.
how is that different in mindset than if you when you're approaching sort of a more commercial video that maybe we're all used to?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I'll use an example of a recent one as a woman named Marcy who had multiple myeloma, and she actually worked at the company that makes biospecimens that cancer researchers and doctors use to study multiple myeloma. And more interestingly, her brother is the head of cancer research at Memorial Sloan Kettering. So it was like a very bizarre experience for her. She had like rushed into surgery at the day that they found it. It was like very dramatic. The difference when you're storyboarding that, if I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to make this as a corporate feel good video versus how do I think about this as if I'm going to be showing in a theater, um, is I just think more like a filmmaker and I try to think about theme. I have to really talk to the patient and make it her story, right? It's really easy for me and for anyone in marketing to get into this mindset of like, I know what story needs to be told and I'm going to extract that. But what I found with Marcy is that by co-creating it with her, because she was kind of nervous at first, right? It's not fun to be in front of a camera for everyone, especially with something pretty vulnerable. Like I was going in there, I was like, we're gonna do recre shots. I booked a hospital bed set, and we're gonna have people. We're gonna go. And she was like, no, 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 no. We're not doing. I'm not going back to the worst day of my life. We wrote the story together, and I used visual themes. In this case, her lesion was considered a unicorn by the doctors. So we used the unicorn as a theme. My client was freaking out. They're like, unicorns? And I was like, unicorns and rainbows. And my client's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be too weird. But I have this bounce. Since you know about lighting, you know about bounces, right? It's like a big reflective surface that's called a rain bounce that creates subtle rainbows on space. So we did all these beautiful shots of her kind of looking pensive with rainbow background, and it's not meant to be a forward like jumping through the air AI unicorns and rainbows, but like the way I try to think about theme. is I think one of the biggest things that changes how I look at the film, like what's the visual style. I think we just get used to like plug and play, patient story, meet John, but so it helps me open up my creative brain a little bit more and bring more to the table than you would get with a kind of standard video.
And is visually, is it, I'm assuming, is it's very different than one versus the other, or do you use the
I
same
mean, I hope
techniques?
so.
Okay.
I hope so. I get to open myself up to like, I mean, everything has to be driven by the theme of the story, right? Like, why are we doing a walking shot, or why are we doing a wide shot, or why are we lighting it in this way? Like, what's the mood and the lighting? I get to be a little bit more edgy with my lighting and a little bit more forward with the choice of B-roll when we're going for a film festival film, more emotional. And you're also pulling out some of those phrases that you would normally put in when it's a video that's like an ad, right? And because of Terumo BCT, I'm here today, right? You do pull a lot of that out. So that's one of the main differences is you're not really talking about the product when you're making short film, but when you're marketing publicly about anything in healthcare, it's about the disease, it's about the problem, and it's about the patient. It's not really about you. So one of the biggest differences is I'm always encouraging the client not to talk about themselves, which is hard because we have really cool stuff to share, or yeah, it's hard not to talk about ourselves.
Well, it's, I mean, I can only, again, I have not experienced this, so I'm only going to imagine this, but I'm hearing you say that when you approach this as an actual film to be submitted to the film festival, the product, the company fades into the background. They're part of the story, but they're not the hero of the story. Clearly, they're just
Right.
part of that person's story. And therefore therefore it's not as commercial feeling.
And that I think wins a lot of people over, and that allows the company to then ride the wave of public positive sentiment that goes along with that and the patient story. There's this kind of new movement in marketing, especially when it comes to the documentary world of like presented by, right? Films presented by brands, and it's not about the brand. And so it's much more subtle marketing, and it allows you to create something that you would really want to show to your family, right? Like, let's focus on creating something that's going to change hearts and minds and not get weighed down with the same kind of language. However, I'm asterisking all that on to say a lot of times it is something you need. You do need a straightforward testimonial, or you need a who we are video. And we do that all the time. We just keep bringing that kind of artistic license through the door to make sure people are really engaged. Like, what's the hook? What's the opening? How am I going to hold your attention for 4 minutes? Or in Marcy's story, it's 10 minutes. And it doesn't feel like 10 minutes, but we had to work really hard to make
Well,
it feel short.
and I like what you said there in the sense that it's not either or. It's not that you choose to do a commercial, you know, here's who we are, feel good story, or a documentary film that can go to a film festival. You can do both,
Yeah.
and there's a place for
Yeah.
both. And that's where my next question was going to go is, you know, first of all, this is unique. I've not heard of any marketing tactic in healthcare that talks about film festival as a channel here. So
Yeah.
tell me more about that channel. Like what is riding that wave? Like how do you leverage being in a film festival with a film
Yeah.
that was sponsored by you or powered by you or
Yeah. I'll tell you. And do you mind if I share my screen? Is
no,
that
go
okay?
ahead, please.
Okay. So for Mariah's story, it's their most popular video, 120,000 views. We submitted to, I think, 10 different festivals and we got into two. And then Mariah was able to go speak at those festivals because they were both in the New Jersey area, right? So I figure out where she is so she can get leverage. And then she actually got invited to the White House to speak at sickle cell. I took credit completely for that, which is not true. She's an activist. But like how we leverage it is you're creating the post campaign of the film. And I actually just got pictures back that I can't pull up right now because we have to get approval from a screening that just happened 2 weeks ago. It was actually a double head screening, but like the benefit is okay, the way you make the video is generally the same. Storyboard approval, it gets posted on YouTube. The difference with a film festival angle is you might wait to post it on YouTube until it's been screened so that you can put laurels. And most film festivals want to be the premiere. And there's kind of levels. We're not always submitting, like most people think Sundance. There's hundreds of festivals that are much smaller. There are ones that are focused on very specific things, documentary or comedy or just whatever your hometown is. But these are community-based festivals that are bringing out a lot of different people. And how you leverage it is you submit to a bunch of them. When you get in, you create social media posts around it, and you make sure someone from your company goes. And then you invite people, right? So if you're a hospital, you would do it in your same town where the film and story is, and you would invite people both from the internal, from the hospital itself, from the family who's filmed, and then you make another social post and social engagement out of it. But the best part is you don't have to run the event. You're not hosting a gala. You just get to show up and like everyone gets to take pictures in front of the picture wall. It just creates a lot more. And then for me, leveraging that kind of in-person experience is one of the best things that the film festival does. When people go sit and watch something together, it's really different from watching it alone on YouTube on your computer. And then you're engaging with people and there's conversations. But for me, it's just about like the amount that you can get out of it is so much more when you start creating in-person activations of the story.
Now, I don't want to give away your secret sauce, but is it, it
That's my
sound,
secret
is,
sauce. I'll
well,
tell you.
is it hard? Is it hard to submit? I mean, I've never done it,
No,
but
you
is it hard to
you go on
submit to?
Film Freeway. Yeah, let me show you right now. I walk people. I talk at colleges all the time, and this is what filmmakers do. They go on Film Freeway. So most of the time, if you're an independent filmmaker and you want to make it big in Hollywood, it used to be that you could submit to film festivals, get picked, and then get a big budget to do a feature. That doesn't really happen anymore. However, short as most filmmakers make short films, which is what I do, right? Professionally, I'm making short films professionally, paid for by these different healthcare companies, right? If you want to call patient story or testimonial, it's still a short film. It's the same kind of thing, right? But you have a Film Freeway account and you have projects like this one, and you wait for all of the film festivals to get back. This is one about a woman who survives 9/11, actually. But let's look at a healthcare one. Hear Me Now. This is one that's won all these multiple awards. You upload it to a web page, have the directors, everything, and then we submit to a bunch of festivals. And I will even show you where we submitted. Let's see here. Hear Me Now. And then they let you know. It's that easy. You have to click, you buy it, you add it to a cart, and then you write them a letter. You say, hey guys, when I submit, you say, hey guys, this is a film that takes place in Texas and it's really awesome. And we'd love for you to feature this woman. She can come out and she and her family will come because what does the festival care about, Colin?
It cares about audience. It
They're
cares about
selling tickets.
selling
Yeah.
tickets. Yeah.
So you pitch them that you're going to bring people, which you will, and then everyone benefits, right? The festival gets more audience, they get more people, this. So I consider it super fun. And for most of my clients, the marketers, they don't get to have this kind of reception for their stories until and so it's like everyone feels really good. And my favorite thing about it is really super easy to apply. You just have to make a page and really just spend the money to submit and write letters. But the thing that people are generally paying me for is that I know which kinds of festivals and kind of how to write the language. But there are people out there whose whole profession is film festival strategist. And those are tough jobs because you get blamed for not being, they're like, why didn't I get into New York Film Festival? The film strategist has to be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm talking a lot about this, but it really is only like 10% of my job. It just informs so much of how we think about the work we do, you know?
Well, and again, you're leading me right there. So I was going to ask. So we spent a lot of time talking about the film festival stuff, the documentary style
Yeah.
thing you're doing, but at the heart of it, you tell a lot of patient stories, right, from a patient's
Yeah.
point of view, or incorporate a
Yeah.
patient story into some of the more corporate side of work that you do. Cameron, given your experience, what's the key to telling a good patient story, regardless of what the output or where that output is going to be
Yeah.
viewed, or what channel you're going to push it on?
Specificity.
Specificity.
Oh,
Okay.
specificity, 100%. And this is something that I teach in workshops, like that you can use internally to get budget or how you tell, no matter where you tell a story, the thing that most people shy away from is hyper-specificity. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to tell you, there's story one and story two. Story one, um, young woman presented with sickle cell was restricted from her birth options and then utilized blood cell exchange during pregnancy. And then story two is Mariah was 24. She had just gotten out of college and she's in her first gyno appointment. She thinks it's a normal appointment, and the doctor leaves. And as he's walking out the door, says, you should never give birth because you have sickle cell disease, and I'm going to put you on birth control, and then slams the door. So, like, what's the difference between those two things? Which one do you think your brain's going to retain? One or two, Colin?
Right. Number two, for sure.
It's always specificity and like how is the brain attaching, right? We're storytelling animals. It's how we share information. And if the more hyperspecific you are about sense memories, experience, name, feelings, the more likely your brain is to actually create new neurons and retain it. And we often skip that part because we think it's going to be boring or we think it's going to separate people. But the biggest thing I really work on is specificity and really just trying to find a way to stay away from generalizations, general statements, and go into hyper specific story moments. What did it feel like? What was the wallpaper like? Right? Um, that's my number one. I have a lot more tips, but that's the one that I'm always shouting from the rooftops.
That, I mean, I gotta be honest, that is very counter to what the prevailing, I'll call it common sense would be, because patient stories are so, well, from my experience, patient stories are so hard to tell because not everyone can identify with it. Not everyone has the same illness, the same disease, the same condition, the same lived experience as the person you're telling the story of. And so sometimes, the tendency would be to bring it up a level, right? So
Let's
that I can
generalize
identify.
it. But it's interesting, right? And that's what I hear most of the time. However, that is counterintuitive to what actually works. The weird thing is, when you let go of that and go hyper specific and say we end up finding ways to relate to it, right? When you go
Oh.
specific to this person's journey, your brain will find ways to relate in ways that when it's general, because your brain wants to save energy, is going to be like, okay, it doesn't apply to me. It's general. And also, it just throws it right in the trash bin. That's the other thing. When we tend to go general to make it accessible and say, instead of talking about being a single mom of two, just being a parent, right? Being a single mom of two and struggling to put food on the table and struggling to hold down multiple jobs and having a rare disease, right? You're like, oh, I don't want to tell that story because people won't relate to it. But yeah, everyone will, because when you talk about the struggle and you go through the hero's journey, the more you identify with the character. It's sort of like why we want people to read novels, right? Is to learn empathy. Humans, we can't help but put ourselves in the driver's seat of whatever the main character is. And so, yeah, I'm always pushing back and saying, hey, when I see what I see is that a hyper specific story is going to get shared, remembered, and reshared over and over. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes the general statement is what has to go in, and sometimes it comes down to med legal review, right? We can't always have everything we want. The number of great lines, great statements, great clips on the cutting room floor of every marketing department, I just talked to a woman at a pharma company, and you could just see her. She was like, "Oh, there's so much good stuff I wish I could say." But, sometimes you gotta leave it on the floor to fight another day.
Well, there has to be a nemesis in every story, and clearly in this world for
Med legal
filmmaking,
review.
yeah, it's
No.
medical review.
Yeah, the problem is I actually have multiple friends who have that job now, and I can't say them as the enemy because I know that they're actually the hero saving the company from people like me, right? Who are going to come in and try and say things that could get them sued, right? So if I put myself in their shoes, I totally see their side, and I work with the regulatory team. What I've learned to do, Colin, is work with them from the very first blush, very first meeting, right? There's nothing worse than having somebody share some idea that's like fully baked with you, and you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. I need to put my fingerprints on this. Have you had
Well,
any experience like that with
yeah, that happens a lot in marketing. For no matter,
mm-hmm.
right? You don't want to go to someone with a fully baked idea only to have them veto it because of something fundamental you made an assumption on that can't actually happen because of some regulatory thing, right?
That's
So,
happened. Or some VP who was on vacation who suddenly is back. He's like,
yeah,
whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah,
yes, totally. Yeah, we've all been there. We've all been there.
we've all been there.
So walk me through the process. So you mentioned a couple of things here, like storyboard, you got approval. So when
Yeah.
you get involved or when you look at a project to create a video story, what are the main steps that we should remember to do as marketers?
Do lots of interviews. The most One of the most important things I do is all the upfront interviews. Like so with J&J, I actually interviewed a bunch of surgeons and then patients that they didn't have to find for me, and that takes a lot of time. I'm actually doing a film about women with double mastectomies who get full tattoos. Have you ever seen this where like you get kind of recreating your body after breast cancer? And I'm interviewing those women. And most of the work is like producer work. You're
Mm.
interviewing, 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 and trying not to fall in love with everyone you interview because you have to find someone who's going to be great on camera, who's going to let you in. And a lot of times people come and they're like, I have the perfect patient, like someone like Marcy. We can't pass this up, right? This person's story is perfect. But what I've seen in the past with my own work and with work here is that sometimes the perfect person on paper is not the perfect person on camera.
Mm.
And that really comes through. So like interviewing more people than you think you need and asking them if and interviewing their family. Is the family okay? Like all the other things, right? I think we just start running down the runway really fast once we have the right idea. And the other biggest mistake we make is making assumptions about how the story should be told. So I mentioned Mariah's story. I was told by the client, okay, sickle cell patient, we've already got the patient. My goal is tears. That's what the client said. Goal is tears. I was like, I can do that. what do you think a white woman thinking about a person with sickle cell is gonna, I'm gonna make a sad, what, violin story, right? So I kind of have this idea in my mind. And when I asked Mariah, what do you want to center in this film about you? She said black joy. And I was like, black joy, what? And she's like, I want to show how happy I am. I'm like living my life. I'm doing what I want. Totally changed the story, like 100% changed how we got tears was through the beauty. And like the tear moment in this film is when you see the pictures of her child that she has like against all odds and how she's living her life. So I think those are the two biggest things I really advise on just from my own experience is like interview more people than you think. Um, and make sure you're always asking the patient, is this what you want to share? And theme, right? Like, why? And a great example would be, yeah, my client saying, I want tears. Okay, why are we making this? What's the goal? What do we want the audience and patient to, what do we want the audience to feel? A lot of times the audience for my films are doctors or patients, right? What do I want them to feel? Do I want them to feel uplifted and like just try to think about it like you're writing an essay? I think a lot of marketers are inherently are all I think all marketers are great storytellers because you have to be, right? And so the hard part as a storyteller is to kind of put your ego on the shelf a little bit and ask and be willing to be flexible on it. And it's something I'm willing to admit I have a hard time with sometimes because I'm like, I know exactly what's best. I have the best idea. The thing about filmmaking is you have to change on the fly, right? Something's going to happen. It's raining that day. We can't do the outdoor shoot. How are we going to shift this? But yeah, the things to consider, I think the choice of patient is the most important choice you make when you're making one of these stories.
Cameron, what advice would you give to someone who is super interested in doing a story like this, a patient-centric story, something that they're enticed by this idea of maybe making it as if they were going to submit it to a film festival, and they're going to run into an executive who's going to look at them with like, "Are you on something like a film festival?" Like, what would you say to
Film
that to
festival.
help that person convince their executive?
I think I just would, at the end of the day, it just helps to have success stories and
Okay.
just show how, like, show posters of past examples and saying, and look, this client got, a raise, and look how successful this project was. The film festival video that we made for Trumo is like 200% more views than anything else they've ever made, right? So take a chance on doing something a little artistic. I would even make an analogy to the film world, right? Right now, most films are remakes, but the most creative films are the ones that tend to make the most money, right? Like which ones won the Oscar this year? None of them were actually in the remakes world, right? And so I think being willing to take a chance on doing something creative and maybe working with a filmmaker, it's worth a shot. If you tend to make videos that are all the same way and in your same brand voice, I understand that people are fearful to try and change their brand voice. But I would say if you have like a big new campaign, you're already taking a big swing with something, do the same thing with the way you do your video marketing. And the film festival thing, it's like there's really no risk. The worst thing that could happen is you don't get in, and then no one knows, right? Like I've never seen any like negative outcome from this, but I am massively biased, so I will stop there and say, yeah, I'd say it's always worth it to take big creative swings and focus on the patient more than anything else.
Well, my final question for you, Cameron, like, how do you know when you've got it right? Like, as a filmmaker, as a customer, when you look at a film that's ready to go out there in the world, so you've been through the editing process, how do you know you've got it right?
Okay, that is such a good question. You're amazing. How do I know? Well, Maya Angelou's quote, people don't remember what you did or said, but how you make them feel. I do use a tier test. Like, if the film that I've been working on for months still makes me get a single little misty eye, that's when I know I've got it right. Because it's pretty hard to make me messed up. I'm kidding. It's really not. I'm an easy crier. I'm very emotional. But like it's a feeling you get, and I wish I could describe it because as a marketer, you've gotten stuff from vendors before where it's like really close and you're really happy with them and you're like, okay, they kind of got the brief, but there's just like, there's just a couple little edits to make. I think me and the client tend to know when we've got it right. And it tends to come on the second draft at least, right? The second or third draft. Um, it's a mix of like the emotion, the music, the timing, and the exact voiceover. How do you know when you've got it right? I would say if you are wondering, the best use case would be to show it to someone in your life who has no frame of reference for it and watch their face. Um, I will say my boyfriend, my parents, my friends have watched a lot of my films, so I try to branch out and go to people who who don't really have anything in connection with me, and see how they react emotionally, because I'm always looking for what are people are always going to say that was great. That was great, Cameron. But it's like if you didn't see any change in their face, I think that's how you know you haven't gotten it right. I'm really
I
looking
like
for some
that.
kind of emotional response. Yeah. I hope that's good, Colin.
No, I like that. I like that. You showing it to people, showing your work to someone who has no vested interest and no, I'll call it biased because they're your friend or family member or loved one, can be very helpful as they're totally objective, right? They have nothing to,
So
they have no skin in the game.
I guess a neighbor, it's kind of hard to show it to somebody who really doesn't know you at all, right?
Sure.
Like at the bus stop, hey man, 4 minute video. Can I bother you for a sec? It's like there's no, but I would say like finding someone who's kind of outside your immediate circle, and if you can watch it with them, I know that's the worst. Because have you ever done anything like this where you're like, it's like a joke with filmmakers where you're like sitting there while your friend is watching your film, just emanating nervous and intense energy, and like cutting in every 5 minutes, being like, oh, that was the shot where we used the China ball, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, 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 shut up. But I do think, yeah, the way you know you've got it right is you feel it in your heart and you feel it in your misty little eyes. But the way you really know is when you can see other people having an emotional reaction.
I love it. Well, Cameron, I could spend another hour talking with you, and maybe we will at our next one. But my final question for you is, where can people go to connect with you and to learn more about yo-yos?
Oh, that's such a great question. Yoyos.ai. And I will say I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post a lot about my work. And if you're interested in kind of getting tips on just filmmaking, storytelling in the industry of healthcare, Cameron Kitt, find me on LinkedIn. And I hope to connect with you guys there. Thank you, Colin.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful information, Cameron. It's been great having you on the show.
Thanks.
I literally could have spent another hour speaking with Cameron. I was completely fascinated with her work as a filmmaker and how she puts patients at the center of what she does. I really appreciated the care she takes in ensuring that patients are a co-creator and a partner, not just a subject of the films she makes. I never in a million years would have thought about a film festival as a way to build brand awareness, but seeing Cameron do it was frankly inspiring. I can't wait to have her on the program again. And hey, if you made it this far in the video, we would really appreciate it if you mash that like button and click subscribe. Also, head on over to Swaay.Health, that's Sway with 2 A's, .health, where you will find more great content like this. I'm Colin Hung. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.